The moment Trevor walked into the Meridian Industries boardroom, he felt like a king. His hand rested possessively on the small of Amber's back as he guided her through the glass doors, her tight red dress hugging every curve. He'd told her to dress to impress and she delivered. His colleagues from Henderson and Associates filed in behind them, clutching their presentation materials and tablets. They had no idea he was about to secure the biggest deal of his career and likely a VP promotion. "This is it, baby," he whispered to Amber, his breath hot against her ear. "After today everything changes. The new CEO is going to love our proposal." Amber giggled, her perfectly manicured hand squeezing his arm. "I'm so proud of you, Trevor. You've worked so hard for this." He had worked hard. 10 years at Henderson and Associates, climbing from junior associate to senior partner. This meeting with Meridian Industries would cement his legacy. The company was worth billions, and whoever secured them as a client would become untouchable in the industry. Trevor had spent months preparing, pulling strings, calling in favors to even get this meeting. And now, he'd brought Amber along as his personal assistant to show the new CEO he was a man who appreciated beauty and success. The boardroom was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline, the glass gleaming in the afternoon sun. A massive conference table dominated the center, polished to a mirror shine. Trevor selected seats near the head of the table, positioning himself where he'd have the best view of the CEO when they arrived. "Mr. Henderson, should we review the presentation one more time?" asked Patterson, one of the junior associates Trevor had brought along. "No need," Trevor said dismissively. "I know this pitch backward and forward. Just follow my lead and try not to look too nervous when the CEO arrives." He checked his watch. 2 minutes to 3. Right on schedule. Trevor straightened his tie, a silk burgundy number that had cost him $300. Amber touched up her lipstick using her phone camera. Everything was perfect. The doors opened. Trevor stood immediately, his most charming smile already in place. His colleagues rose with him, a synchronized show of respect and professionalism. This was the moment. The new CEO of Meridian Industries was about to walk in and change his life forever. But the woman who entered the room made Trevor's smile freeze on his face. She wore a stunning emerald green suit, tailored perfectly to her figure. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo that showcased her graceful neck and the diamond earrings glinting at her ears. Her skin glowed under the boardroom lights, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who owned not just the room, but the entire building. Behind her, a team of executives in crisp business attire filed in and took positions around the table. Trevor's brain refused to process what his eyes were seeing. Sienna. His wife. His wife, who he'd left at home that morning after a quick kiss on the cheek. His wife, who he thought was probably shopping or having lunch with her sister. His wife, who had no idea he was meeting with a potential client today. Except she wasn't any of those things. She was the CEO of Meridian Industries. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," Sienna said, her voice smooth and professional as she took her seat at the head of the table. "And ladies," she added, her eyes sliding over to Amber with cool disinterest before returning to Trevor. Trevor felt his legs go weak. He gripped the edge of the table to steady himself. Beside him, Amber shifted uncomfortably, clearly confused by the sudden change in atmosphere. "Please sit down," Sienna continued, gesturing graciously at the chairs. Her team settled in around her, opening laptops and pulling out documents with practiced efficiency. Trevor sank into his chair. His mouth had gone completely dry. Patterson and the other associates exchanged confused glances, clearly picking up on the weird energy but not understanding its source. "I'm Sienna Lawrence, CEO of Meridian Industries," she continued as if she were introducing herself to strangers. "Thank you all for coming today. I've been looking forward to this meeting." Lawrence. She'd used her maiden name. When had she changed it back? How had he not known? "I understand Henderson and Associates is interested in partnering with us on the Riverside Development Project," Sienna said, opening a folder in front of her. "I've reviewed your initial proposal and I have some questions." Trevor tried to speak but no words came out. His brain was spinning too fast. How was this possible? How long had she been the CEO of Meridian? How had he not known? They lived in the same house, slept in the same bed. Well, not recently. He'd been spending more nights at Amber's apartment, claiming late work sessions. But still, how had Sienna hidden this from him? "Mr. Henderson?" Sienna's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts. "Did you hear my question?" Yes. Sorry." Trevor cleared his throat, trying to pull himself together. He was a professional. He could handle this. "Could you repeat it?" I asked about your company's experience with projects of this scale. The Riverside development is a $2 billion undertaking. That's significantly larger than anything Henderson and Associates has handled before. Her tone was perfectly polite, but Trevor could hear the edge underneath. She knew. Of course she knew. About Amber. About everything. That's why she was doing this. She'd somehow gotten herself hired as the CEO of the one company he needed most, just to humiliate him. But how? Sienna didn't have CEO experience. She'd been working part-time as a marketing consultant from home, handling small clients while taking care of their house. She couldn't possibly be qualified for this position. Except she was sitting at the head of the table, and everyone in the room was looking at her with respect and deference. We've handled several projects in the 100 million range, Trevor managed to say. And we have partnerships with firms that specialize in larger developments. I see. Sienna made a note on her tablet. And who would be leading this project from your end? I would be the senior partner overseeing everything, Trevor said, finding his footing. He could salvage this. He had to. Along with my team. He gestured vaguely at Patterson and the others. And her? Sienna's eyes moved to Amber. What's her role? The question hung in the air like a knife. Amber shifted in her seat, suddenly looking very small in her red dress. Trevor's collar felt too tight. She's my executive assistant, Trevor said. The lie tasted bitter on his tongue. I see, Sienna said again. Her expression gave nothing away. And does your executive assistant typically attend client meetings of this magnitude? I bring her to important meetings to take notes and handle logistics, Trevor said, the words coming faster now. He needed to change the subject. But perhaps we should focus on the proposal itself. I think you'll find our approach to the Riverside project is exactly what Meridian needs. Oh, I've read your proposal very carefully, Trevor, Sienna said, and the use of his first name sent a chill down his spine. In fact, I've read everything about Henderson and Associates. Your financial statements, your client list, your employee records. I like to be thorough when considering partnerships. She let that sink in for a moment before continuing. I have to say, I'm not impressed. Trevor felt the blood drain from his face. Your company has a troubling pattern of overpromising and under-delivering. 3 of your last 5 major clients have filed complaints. Your employee turnover rate is 40% higher than industry standard. And your senior partners seem more interested in personal pursuits than professional excellence. Each word was a hammer blow. Sienna delivered them calmly, almost kindly, which somehow made it worse. Furthermore, she continued, I have concerns about ethical standards. A company is only as strong as its leadership, and leadership requires integrity, honesty, loyalty. The last word hit Trevor like a slap. Amber grabbed his hand under the table, but he barely felt it. He was watching his career implode in real time, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Ms. Lawrence, Patterson spoke up nervously, perhaps if we could discuss the specific concerns, we could address them. That won't be necessary, Sienna said smoothly. I've made my decision. Meridian Industries will not be partnering with Henderson and Associates on the Riverside development or any other project. The room went silent. However, Sienna continued, I did want to meet with you all personally, particularly you, Trevor. I wanted to look you in the eye when I told you that your actions have consequences. Trevor's heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst through his chest. I'll be filing for divorce next week, Sienna said, her voice never losing its professional tone. My lawyers will be in touch. I'd suggest you get your own representation. Good ones are expensive, but I'm sure your executive assistant can help you find someone within your budget. She stood, and her team immediately rose with her. This meeting is over. Security will show you out. As if on cue, 2 security guards appeared at the door. Trevor finally found his voice. Sienna, wait. Please. Can we talk about this privately? She looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since entering the room. Her eyes were clear and cold. No, she said simply. We're done talking. We've been done for a long time. I'm just making it official. She turned and walked out, her team following like a well-trained unit. The click of her heels on the marble floor echoed in the sudden silence. Trevor sat frozen in his chair, unable to process what had just happened. Beside him, Amber started crying softly. Patterson and the other associates stared at him with a mixture of shock and horror. The security guards moved closer. Sir, we need you to leave now. Trevor stood on shaking legs. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. An hour ago he'd been on top of the world. Now everything was crumbling around him. As he walked out of the boardroom, past the curious stares of Meridian employees, past the gleaming reception desk and out into the brutal afternoon sunlight, one thought kept repeating in his mind. How long had she known? Sienna had always been an early riser. She loved the quiet hours before dawn when the house was still and peaceful. She'd make herself coffee, sit in the breakfast nook overlooking their backyard, and watch the sky slowly lighten. It was her time, her space before the demands of the day began. That Tuesday morning in March started like any other. She woke at 5:30, carefully sliding out of bed so as not to disturb Trevor. He'd gotten home late the night before, sometime after midnight. Another work dinner, he'd said when he'd texted her around 7. She'd already eaten alone by then, used to his increasingly frequent absences. She went through her morning routine on autopilot. Coffee brewing, toast in the toaster, her favorite blue cardigan pulled over her nightgown. She settled into her usual spot and opened her laptop. She had 3 marketing proposals due this week for her consulting clients, small businesses that needed help with their social media and branding. The work was fine, flexible, but lately it felt small. Insignificant. Like she was capable of so much more but had somehow convinced herself this was enough. Upstairs, she heard the shower turn on. Trevor was up early, which was unusual. He typically slept until 7, rolled out of bed at 7:15, and rushed through his morning routine to make it to the office by 8:30. Sienna sipped her coffee and tried to focus on the proposal in front of her. A local bakery wanted to revamp their Instagram presence. She'd come up with a content calendar, some ideas for engaging posts, suggestions for photography. Was good work. The bakery owner would be pleased. So why did she feel so empty? The shower shut off. She heard Trevor moving around their bedroom, probably getting dressed. Any minute now he'd come down, grab a coffee, maybe a granola bar, kiss her cheek and rush out the door. That was their routine. That had been their routine for the past 2 years, ever since he'd made senior partner and his schedule had become impossible. She closed her laptop and went to pour him a coffee. It was ready when he came downstairs, already dressed in one of his expensive suits, this one charcoal gray with a blue tie. "Thanks, babe," he said, accepting the mug and taking a long drink. "You're the best." "Early start today?" she asked. "Yeah, big presentation this afternoon. Need to prep." He checked his phone, frowning at something on the screen. "Probably going to be another late night. Don't wait up." "Okay," Sienna said, though something in her chest tightened. "Good luck with the presentation." He kissed her cheek, distracted, already mentally out the door. "Love you." "Love you too." And then he was gone, the garage door rumbling as his car pulled out. Sienna stood in the kitchen, holding her own coffee mug, feeling hollow. She tried to go back to her work, but her concentration was shot. Instead, she found herself wandering through their house, a 4-bedroom colonial they'd bought 3 years ago. It was beautiful, exactly what they dreamed about when they were dating. But lately it felt more like a museum than a home. Clean, perfect, empty. She ended up in their bedroom, making the bed even though they had a housekeeper who'd do it later. Her hands smoothed the comforter automatically, tucking in the corners the way her mother had taught her. As she reached for Trevor's pillow, her hand knocked against something hard. His phone. He'd forgotten his phone. Sienna picked it up, intending to call him at the office so he could come back for it. He'd be lost without it, checking emails and messages every few minutes. But as she held it, the screen lit up with a notification. A text message. From someone named Amber. "Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you. When can I see you again?" Sienna stared at the words. Read them again. And again. Her hands had gone numb. Another message came through as she watched. "I know you're probably with her right now, but I miss you already. Tonight, right? You promised." Sienna's brain felt like it was moving through mud. This couldn't be what it looked like. There had to be an explanation. Amber was probably a colleague. The messages were probably taken out of context. Last night could mean anything. The work dinner. It was about the work dinner. But deep down in the part of her that she'd been ignoring for months, she knew. She knew. Her fingers moved on their own, opening the phone. Trevor had never been paranoid about security. His passcode was 1234, the default, because he could never remember anything more complex. The messages loaded. There were hundreds of them, stretching back months. 6 months, she realized, scrolling up and up. It had started in September, right after Trevor had hired a new executive assistant. Amber. The messages were explicit. Photos that made Sienna's stomach turn. Plans for meetups, hotels, her apartment. Complaints about Sienna. "She doesn't understand you like I do. You deserve so much better. When are you going to leave her?" And Trevor's responses. Soon, baby. I promise. Just need to figure out the finances. You're so much more exciting than her. Sienna sat down on the edge of the bed, the phone clutched in her hand. She felt like she was floating outside her body, watching this happen to someone else. This couldn't be her life. This couldn't be her marriage. But it was. She sat there for a long time, reading through the messages, learning about the affair in excruciating detail. They'd been to restaurants she and Trevor used to go to, hotels where she and Trevor had celebrated anniversaries. He'd taken Amber to the company Christmas party and introduced her as his assistant, and Sienna had smiled and shaken her hand, completely oblivious. How stupid had she been? How blind? Finally, she heard Trevor's car pull into the driveway. He'd realized he'd forgotten his phone and come back for it. She heard the garage door, his footsteps through the house, coming up the stairs. He appeared in the bedroom doorway, slightly out of breath. Hey, I forgot my... He trailed off when he saw her sitting on the bed, holding his phone. Sienna looked up at him. Her husband of 8 years. The man she'd met in college, dated for 3 years, married in a beautiful ceremony by the lake. The man she'd built a life with, dreamed with, trusted completely. Who's Amber? She asked quietly. Trevor's face went pale. Sienna, I can explain. Who is she? She works with me. She's just... Your mistress, Sienna finished. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, too calm, too detached. For 6 months. In case you lost count. It's not what you think, Trevor said, moving into the room. It just happened. I never meant for it to happen. But it did happen. And you let it keep happening. For half a year. He reached for her, but she stood up, moving away. The phone was still in her hand. Don't, she said. Sienna, please. I love you. This thing with Amber, it doesn't mean anything. It's just, you've been so distant lately, so focused on your work. I felt lonely. I made a mistake. You made a choice, Sienna corrected. Every day for 6 months you made a choice. Tears were running down her face now, hot and angry. She wiped them away roughly. I need you to leave, she said. What? Get out of this room. I need to think. Sienna, we need to talk about this. No, she said, her voice finally rising. We don't. Not right now. Take your phone and get out. She threw it at him. He caught it reflexively, still staring at her with something between guilt and panic. Please, he said. Out. He left. Sienna heard him go back downstairs, heard the garage door again, heard his car pull away. Then the house was silent once more. She looked around their bedroom. Their bed where they'd slept together for years. The dresser where his clothes mingled with hers. The wedding photo on the nightstand, both of them smiling, so young and hopeful. Everything was a lie. But even through the pain, through the betrayal and the hurt and the sheer overwhelming weight of it all, something else was growing in Sienna's chest. Clarity. For the first time in years, she saw her life with perfect clarity. She'd been sleepwalking through it, accepting whatever scraps of attention and affection Trevor threw her way, convincing herself that this was what marriage looked like after the honeymoon phase ended. She'd made herself smaller, quieter, easier. She'd poured her energy into supporting his career while letting her own ambitions wither. No more. Sienna dried her eyes and opened her laptop. She had work to do, but not the marketing proposals. Those could wait. She pulled up her resume and stared at it. Marketing consultant. Part-time work. Small clients. Is this really all she was capable of? No. Before Trevor, before the marriage, she'd had dreams. Big ones. She'd wanted to run her own company, to make real decisions, to matter in a way that went beyond social media posts for local businesses. She'd given up those dreams because Trevor needed her support. Because being a good wife meant putting his career first. Because somewhere along the way she'd forgotten that she mattered too. Well, she was remembering now. Sienna began typing. She updated her resume, adding all the skills she'd developed over the years. Strategic planning. Financial management. Team leadership. Client relations. She'd been running her own consulting business, managing multiple projects, handling difficult clients. Those were real skills. Valuable skills. She spent the entire day on it. By evening, she had a polished resume, a cover letter template, and a list of companies she wanted to work for. Real companies. Big companies. She would rebuild her life. And she would make sure Trevor regretted every single choice he'd made. Sienna started her job search the next morning. She didn't tell Trevor. When he came home that night, sheepish and apologetic, bringing flowers and promises to end things with Amber, she accepted his apology coldly. She didn't forgive him. She didn't plan to. But she let him think maybe, possibly, there was a chance. She needed time and his guilt bought her that. For the next 2 weeks, Sienna maintained a careful facade. She was cordial but distant with Trevor. She made meals, kept the house, went through the motions of their life together. But in the hours he was at work, she was on her computer, applying for positions, researching companies, networking online. The responses started coming in. HR managers wanted to talk. Recruiters reached out. Apparently, her skills were more impressive than she'd realized. She took calls when Trevor was at the office. She scheduled interviews for the middle of the day, telling him she had client meetings. She bought new suits, professional and sharp, in bright colors that made her feel powerful. Royal blue, deep burgundy, emerald green. She was done hiding. 3 weeks after discovering the affair, Sienna got a call from a man named Julian Torres. He ran an executive consulting firm that specialized in placing high-level talent in major corporations. "I saw your resume come across my desk," he said, his voice warm and professional. "And I have to say you're exactly the kind of person we're looking for. Would you be interested in meeting?" They met at a coffee shop downtown. Julian was in his early 50s with silver hair and kind eyes. He ordered them both lattes and got straight to business. "You're underselling yourself," he said, reviewing her resume on his tablet. "These skills, this experience, you should be running a department at minimum. Why are you doing freelance consulting?" Sienna hesitated. She'd never said it out loud before. "I guess I thought that's all I could do. My husband's career always took priority." "Your husband is Trevor Henderson?" Julian's eyebrows rose. "Senior partner at Henderson and Associates?" "Yes." Julian sat back, studying her. "Let me be honest with you, Sienna. You have more raw talent than most of the executives I place. But you lack confidence. That's not a criticism, it's an observation. Someone convinced you that you weren't capable of more, and you believed them." The words hit home. Sienna felt tears pricking her eyes but blinked them back. "I want to believe I can do more," she said quietly. "Then let me help you," Julian said. "I don't usually do this, but I see something in you. Give me 3 months. Let me mentor you, coach you, prepare you for the kind of positions you should be applying for. Not entry-level management. Executive level. CO level." CO? Sienna laughed, though it sounded bitter. "That's not realistic." "Why not?" She couldn't think of a good answer. Over the next 3 months, Sienna's life became a careful juggling act. She met with Julian twice a week, learning everything she could about executive leadership. He taught her about financial management, strategic planning, crisis response, team building. He gave her case studies to analyze, problems to solve. He pushed her harder than anyone ever had. "You're brilliant," he told her after she'd solved a particularly complex business scenario. "You see patterns other people miss. You think 3 steps ahead. Stop doubting yourself." At home, Trevor continued his affair with Amber. He was being more careful now, deleting messages, but Sienna had installed tracking software on his phone. She knew every time he went to Amber's apartment, every late-night hotel visit, every lie. She documented all of it. She also quietly separated their finances. Her consulting business had its own accounts and she moved money there systematically. She found an apartment she could afford if needed, signed a lease under her maiden name. She consulted with 3 different divorce attorneys, learning her options, understanding what she was entitled to. She prepared for war but silently, invisibly. And she kept working with Julian. "There's a position I want you to consider," he said one day in late May. They were in his office reviewing her progress. "CEO of Meridian Industries. They're a major real estate development firm looking for new leadership after their founder retired. The board wants someone innovative, someone who can take the company in a new direction." "Julian, I can't." Sienna started. "You can," he interrupted. "I've already spoken to the board. They want to meet you. They know I have no CEO experience. They know you have the skills that matter. Leadership, vision, intelligence. The rest can be learned. They're willing to take a chance on you because I'm willing to stake my reputation on you." Sienna looked at him, this man who'd believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. "Okay," she said. "Set up the meeting." The interview process took 3 weeks. Sienna met with the board multiple times, presented her vision for the company, answered hundreds of questions. She was competing against candidates with decades of experience, prestigious degrees, impressive resumes. But she had something they didn't have. Hunger. She wanted this so badly she could taste it. Not just the job but what it represented. Proof that she was more than Trevor's wife. Proof that she could build something meaningful. Proof that the affair hadn't broken her, it had freed her. In mid-June she got the call. "Congratulations, Ms. Lawrence," the board chairman said. "We'd like to offer you the position of CEO of Meridian Industries." Sienna sat in her car in the parking lot, the phone pressed to her ear, tears streaming down her face. "I accept," she said. That night, Trevor came home early with Chinese takeout, trying to buy his way back into her good graces. She'd been cold for months and he was getting nervous. "Good. I thought we could have dinner together," he said, unpacking containers on the dining table. "Like we used to." Sienna sat down across from him. "That would be nice." They ate in silence for a while. Trevor kept glancing at her, trying to read her mood. "How's the consulting work going?" he finally asked. "Fine," Sienna said. "Actually, I got some good news today. A new client." "That's great, babe." He seemed relieved that she was talking to him. "Anyone I know?" "No," she lied. "Just a small company. Local." She let him think she was still doing her small, insignificant work. Still being the quiet, supportive wife. Still waiting for him to decide whether he wanted to stay with her or leave her for Amber. But inside, Sienna was smiling. She had a secret now. A big one. And when the time was right, when she could cause him the maximum amount of damage, she would reveal it. Trevor Henderson had no idea what was coming. But he would soon find out. The official start date for Sienna's CEO position was August 1st. That gave her 6 weeks to prepare, to learn everything she could about Meridian Industries, and to keep up the charade at home. It was exhausting, living two separate lives, but Sienna found she was good at compartmentalizing. During the day, while Trevor was at work, she studied Meridian's business model, met with key stakeholders in secret, and planned her strategy for taking over the company. Julian helped her every step of the way, introducing her to important contacts, teaching her the unwritten rules of executive leadership. "Remember," he told her, "you don't have to know everything. You need to know how to find the people who know everything and how to make them want to work for you." At night, she came home and played the role of wife. She cooked dinners that Trevor barely ate. She made conversation that he barely listened to. She pretended not to notice when he came home smelling like perfume that wasn't hers. The tracking software on his phone showed her everything. He was seeing Amber 3 or 4 times a week now. They'd gotten careless, bold. Last Tuesday, Trevor had taken her to the Italian restaurant where he'd proposed to Sienna. She'd seen the credit card charge, looked up the restaurant on his location history. Each betrayal should have hurt more. Instead, Sienna felt increasingly numb to it. She was saving all her emotional energy for herself, for her future. Trevor was becoming irrelevant. In early July, she met with her divorce attorney, Natasha Rogers. Natasha was sharp, ruthless, and came highly recommended. "You've done good work documenting everything," Natasha said, reviewing the files Sienna had compiled. "Phone records, credit card statements, photos, messages. This is more than enough to prove adultery. I want to make sure I'm protected," Sienna said. "Financially, I mean. We have a prenup." Natasha smiled. "Prenups can be challenged, especially when there's proof of infidelity. But you don't need to worry. You kept your consulting business separate, you've been moving money strategically. Even with the prenup, you'll walk away with enough. What about the house? You want it?" Sienna thought about their colonial, with its 4 bedrooms and perfect lawn. All the memories, good and bad, that lived in those walls. "No," she decided. "Let him have it. I want a fresh start. Then we'll structure the settlement that way. You get your business, your assets, your freedom. He gets the house and whatever debt comes with it." They spent 2 hours going over strategy. When to file, how to handle the proceedings, what to expect from Trevor's response. Sienna took notes, asked questions, prepared herself for the battle ahead. "One more thing," Natasha said as Sienna was leaving. "When do you plan to tell him about your new job?" "I don't," Sienna said. "Not until I absolutely have to." The look Natasha gave her was pure approval. As July progressed, Sienna quietly moved her most important possessions out of the house. Photo albums from before her marriage. Her grandmother's jewelry. Documents, diplomas, keepsakes. She brought them to her new apartment, the one Trevor didn't know about, and arranged them carefully. This was her real home now. The Colonial was just a place she visited. She also began building relationships with the Meridian Industries executive team. She met with them one-on-one, learning about their roles, their concerns, their hopes for the company's future. She wanted them on her side when she officially took over. The CFO, a woman named Rebecca Park, was particularly helpful. The previous CEO was brilliant but stuck in his ways, Rebecca told her over coffee. "We need someone who can think differently, who isn't afraid to take risks." "What kind of risks?" Sienna asked. We've been approached by several companies looking to partner on major development projects. The old guard was too conservative to commit. But if we could land one or two of these deals, we'd double our revenue in 2 years. Tell me more about these companies. Rebecca pulled out her tablet and showed Sienna a list. Development firms, construction companies, financial institutions. All looking to work with Meridian on projects across the city. One name jumped out at her. Henderson and Associates. This one, Sienna said, pointing. They've been pursuing a partnership? For months, Rebecca confirmed. They want to work with us on the Riverside development. It's a huge project, $2 billion. They're eager, maybe too eager. The previous CEO didn't trust them. Why not? He thought they were overreaching. Their track record doesn't really support a project of that scale. Sienna sat back, her mind racing. Trevor had mentioned the Riverside development once or twice, usually after a few drinks. It was his white whale, the deal that would cement his legacy. And Meridian Industries held the key to it. What would happen if we turned them down? Sienna asked carefully. They'd be devastated, Rebecca said bluntly. This is a make-or-break opportunity for Henderson and Associates. Without Meridian, the Riverside project won't happen, and they'll lose a lot of credibility in the industry. Perfect. I'll want to meet with them myself, Sienna said. Once I'm officially CEO. Set up a meeting for early August. Will do. Sienna went home that evening with a plan forming in her mind. She would let Trevor keep chasing the Meridian deal, keep thinking it was within reach. She'd let him bring his mistress along, parade her around, feel confident and secure. And then she'd destroy him. Trevor was in the living room when she arrived, watching television and eating pizza straight from the box. He'd stopped making an effort months ago, stopped caring whether she noticed. Hey, he said without looking up. Hey, Sienna replied. Long day. Yeah. Lots of meetings. Which probably meant lots of time with Amber. How about you? Same. Just client work. She went upstairs and changed into comfortable clothes. In the mirror she examined herself. She looked different than she had 4 months ago. Stronger. More confident. The woman staring back at her was not the same person who'd found those text messages. That woman had been broken. This woman was powerful. Sienna slept well that night, dreaming of boardrooms and balance sheets and the look on Trevor's face when he finally realized he'd lost everything. The next morning she woke to an email from Rebecca. Meeting with Henderson and Associates scheduled for August 15th. They're very excited. Apparently, their senior partner Trevor Henderson will be leading the presentation personally. Sienna smiled and typed her response. Perfect. I look forward to it. August 1st arrived with brilliant sunshine and temperatures in the mid-80s. Sienna woke in her secret apartment, had coffee on her small balcony, and dressed carefully in her emerald green suit. Today was her first official day as CEO of Meridian Industries, and she wanted to look the part. Julian had sent her a text at 6 in the morning. You're going to be amazing. Believe in yourself. She did believe. For the first time in years, she genuinely believed in her abilities. The Meridian building was downtown, a sleek glass tower that reflected the morning sun. Sienna walked through the lobby with her head high, nodding to security guards who already knew her face from her preliminary visits. She took the elevator to the 23rd floor, where the executive offices were located. Her assistant, Thomas, was waiting at her office door. Good morning, Ms. Lawrence. Welcome to your first day. Thank you, Thomas. I'm glad to be here. Her office was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. A massive desk sat in the center, already equipped with computers and phones. Bookshelves lined one wall, and a seating area with a sofa and chairs occupied another corner. Fresh flowers sat on a side table. The executive team is waiting in the conference room whenever you're ready, Thomas said. Give me 5 minutes. Alone in her office, Sienna stood by the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere down there, Trevor was probably just arriving at Henderson and Associates. He'd kissed her goodbye this morning, a perfunctory peck on the cheek while she pretended to be asleep. He thought she'd spend today at home, working on her laptop, being insignificant. He had no idea where she really was. Sienna smiled and turned from the window. Time to get to work. The executive team meeting went smoothly. Sienna laid out her vision for the company, her goals for the next quarter, her management style. She answered questions, listened to concerns, made it clear she valued their input and experience. I know I'm young and relatively inexperienced compared to my predecessor, she said honestly. But I'm here to learn, to grow, and to lead this company into its next chapter. I can't do that without all of you. We're a team. Rebecca caught her eye and nodded approvingly. The rest of the day was a whirlwind of meetings, introductions, paperwork, and learning the systems. Sienna threw herself into it, absorbing information like a sponge. By 5 o'clock, her brain was exhausted but her spirits were high. Thomas knocked on her door. "Miss Lawrence, you have a call from Julian Torres." "Put him through." Julian's voice came through the speakerphone. "How was day one?" "Overwhelming. Amazing. Terrifying." Sienna laughed. "All of the above. That's exactly how it should feel. Listen, I wanted to check in about the Henderson meeting next week. Are you ready for that?" "I am. It's going to be difficult, seeing him in a professional context." "I know. But I can handle it. I have no doubt. Call me if you need anything." After he hung up, Sienna sat in her office as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She should go home soon. Back to the Colonial, back to Trevor, back to pretending. But first, she pulled up the Henderson and Associates file on her computer. She'd been reading about the company for weeks, learning its strengths and weaknesses. Trevor's name appeared throughout the documents. Senior partner. Led on major projects. High performer. On paper he looked impressive. But Sienna knew the truth. She knew about the complaints from clients. The ethical concerns. The pattern of overpromising and under-delivering. Henderson and Associates was successful despite Trevor, not because of him. And they were vulnerable. The Riverside Development Project was crucial to their future. Without it, they'd likely start losing clients, losing talent, losing reputation. Without Meridian Industries, Henderson and Associates would struggle. Which meant without Sienna, Trevor would struggle. She closed the file and gathered her things. Tomorrow she'd come back and do this all over again. And the day after that. And the day after that. Until the Henderson meeting arrived and she could finally make Trevor understand what he'd lost. When she got home, Trevor was already there, which was unusual. He was in the kitchen attempting to make dinner. Pasta from the looks of it, though the sauce smelled burnt. "Hey," he said, looking up when she entered. "I thought I'd cook tonight. You know, make an effort." "That's sweet," Sienna said, though she felt nothing. "How was your day?" "Good. Really good, actually. We got confirmation that the meeting with Meridian Industries is set for next week. This is huge, Sienna. If we land this deal, I'm looking at a promotion, probably to VP. Maybe even partner track for equity." "That's wonderful, Trevor. I know things have been rough between us," he continued, stirring the pasta with more vigor than necessary. "But this could change everything. More money, better hours, I could cut back on the late nights. We could take a vacation maybe. Work on us." Sienna leaned against the counter, watching him. He actually believed what he was saying. He thought landing the Meridian deal would fix everything, would make her forget about Amber, would restore their marriage. He had no idea that she held all the cards. "That sounds nice," she said. They ate the burnt pasta dinner together, making small talk about nothing. Trevor was animated, hopeful, already planning his presentation for the Meridian meeting. He talked about what he'd wear, what he'd say, how he'd impress the new CEO. "I heard she's young," he said. "Probably in her 30s. Some hotshot the board brought in. I'm going to show her that Henderson is the right choice." "I'm sure you will," Sienna said. After dinner, Trevor retreated to his home office to work on the presentation. Sienna cleaned up the kitchen, then went upstairs to their bedroom. She had her own laptop hidden in her closet, the one Trevor didn't know about. She pulled it out and checked her work emails. Thomas had sent her the Henderson file again, this time with additional notes from Rebecca about their financial situation. It was worse than Sienna had realized. Henderson and Associates had been operating on thin margins for 2 years. They'd taken on too much debt, made some bad investments. The Riverside project wasn't just an opportunity for them. It was a lifeline. Without it, they might not survive the year. Sienna read through the reports twice, making mental notes. Then she closed the laptop and hid it away again. In the bathroom, she washed her face and brushed her teeth. In the mirror, she looked calm, controlled, ready. 2 more weeks of this double life. Then everything would change. Trevor came to bed around midnight, sliding in beside her. She pretended to be asleep. He pressed against her, his hands sliding over her waist. "Sienna," he whispered. "Are you awake?" She didn't respond. He sighed and rolled away. Good. She didn't want his touch. Didn't want his affection. Didn't want anything from him except what she'd take at the meeting. Sienna lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, counting down the days. The morning of August 14th, Trevor woke up before his alarm. Sienna heard him in the shower, singing off-key, clearly in a good mood. She stayed in bed, watching the early light filter through the curtains, mentally preparing for tomorrow. Tomorrow was the day. The Henderson meeting. The moment she'd been planning for months. Trevor emerged from the bathroom in a towel, water still dripping from his hair. "Big day tomorrow," he said, grinning at her. "I barely slept." "You'll do great," Sienna said, sitting up. "You always do." "I'm bringing Amber along," he added casually, as if this were normal. "She's been helping me prep the presentation. Thought it would be good for her to see how these high-level meetings work." Of course he was bringing Amber. Sienna had suspected he would. He couldn't resist showing off his mistress, establishing her as part of his professional life. It was a power move in his mind. Proof that he'd moved on, that he had options. "That's fine," Sienna said. "Whatever you think is best." Trevor looked surprised at her easy agreement. He'd probably expected pushback. "You're okay with that?" "Why wouldn't I be?" Sienna got out of bed and headed to the bathroom. "She's your assistant. It makes sense." She closed the door before he could respond. In the mirror, she allowed herself a small smile. Let him bring Amber. Let him parade her around. It would make the reveal so much sweeter. Sienna spent the day at Meridian, finalizing details for tomorrow's meeting. Rebecca and Thomas helped her prepare the conference room, ensured all the technology was working, arranged for refreshments. Everything had to be perfect. "You seem calm," Rebecca observed around 3 o'clock. "Most people would be nervous about a meeting this big." "I am nervous," Sienna admitted. "But I'm also ready." "Is it true you know Trevor Henderson personally?" Rebecca asked carefully. "I heard rumors." "Where did you hear that?" "Office gossip. Someone said they saw you and Julian talking about him." Sienna considered how much to reveal. "He's my husband," she said finally. "We're separated. He doesn't know I work here." Rebecca's eyes widened. "Oh my God. Tomorrow is going to be interesting," Sienna finished. "Yes. Does he deserve it? Whatever you're planning?" "He does." Rebecca nodded slowly. "Then I hope you destroy him." That evening Sienna didn't go home. She texted Trevor that she was having dinner with her sister and staying over to help with the kids. He responded with a thumbs-up emoji, clearly too focused on tomorrow to care. Instead, Sienna went to her apartment and spent the evening preparing. She reviewed every detail of Henderson's proposal. She rehearsed what she'd say, how she'd act. She tried on her outfit 3 times, finally settling on the emerald green suit that had become her armor. Julian called at 8. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm about to jump off a cliff," Sienna admitted. "Second thoughts?" "No. Just, I want to do this right." "You will. Remember, you're not doing this just for revenge. You're doing this because Henderson and Associates doesn't deserve the Meridian partnership. Their proposal is weak, their track record is questionable. You're making a sound business decision. That happens to also humiliate my cheating husband." "Well," Julian said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "That's just a bonus." They talked for another hour, going over strategy and contingency plans. By the time they hung up, Sienna felt centered again. Ready. She went to bed early but barely slept. Her mind kept running through tomorrow's scenario, imagining Trevor's face when he walked in, Amber's confusion, the moment of recognition. At 5 in the morning she gave up on sleep and made coffee. Watched the sun rise from her balcony. Took a long shower and carefully did her makeup. Put on the green suit and her grandmother's pearl earrings for luck. She arrived at Meridian at 7:30, though the meeting wasn't until 9. Thomas was already there, efficient as always. "Everything is ready, Ms. Lawrence. The Henderson team just confirmed they'll arrive at 8:45. "Perfect. I'll be in my office until then." Sienna sat at her desk, hands folded, breathing slowly. This was it. Months of planning, of secret preparation, of living a double life. It all came down to the next 2 hours. At 8:30 Rebecca knocked on her door. "The team is gathered. We're ready when you are." "Thank you, Rebecca." At 8:40 Thomas called. The Henderson group just entered the building. Sienna's heart rate spiked, but her hands were steady. "Give them 5 minutes to get settled. Then we'll go in." She stood and checked her reflection in the window. Powerful. Professional. Unbreakable. This was who she was now. At 8:45 exactly, Sienna gathered her materials and walked to the conference room. Through the glass walls she could see the Henderson team inside. Trevor in his expensive suit, looking confident. Patterson and 2 other associates, clutching tablets and folders. And Amber, wearing a tight red dress that was completely inappropriate for a business meeting. Sienna paused just outside the door, letting herself have this moment. The last moment before everything changed. Then she nodded to Thomas, who opened the doors. And she walked in. The silence in the boardroom after Sienna's departure was suffocating. Trevor sat frozen in his chair, his brain trying to process what had just happened. Around him, his colleagues were in similar states of shock. Patterson kept opening and closing his mouth like a fish. The other associates stared at the table. Amber was crying quietly, mascara running down her face. The security guards cleared their throats. "Sir, we need you to leave now." Trevor stood mechanically. His legs felt disconnected from his body. He picked up his briefcase, though he couldn't remember packing it. The presentation materials, all those hours of work, lay scattered across the table. Worthless now. The walk out of Meridian Industries was the longest of Trevor's life. Employees stared as the security guards escorted them through the lobby. Some looked curious, others sympathetic, a few openly amused. By tomorrow, everyone in the industry would know what had happened. Outside, the afternoon sun was blinding. Trevor stumbled to his car, Amber trailing behind him. Patterson and the others headed to their own vehicles without a word. "Trevor," Amber said, grabbing his arm. "What just happened? Why didn't you tell me she worked here?" "I didn't know," Trevor said numbly. "What do you mean you didn't know? She's your wife." Trevor corrected automatically. "She said she's filing for divorce." "Oh God." Amber covered her face with her hands. "This is a disaster. Your boss is going to find out. Everyone's going to find out." Trevor's phone started ringing. His boss probably. He ignored it. "Take me home," Amber said. "I can't deal with this right now." "I need to go home," Trevor said. "I need to talk to Sienna. She just humiliated you in front of your entire team. What makes you think she'll talk to you?" But Trevor was already getting in his car. He had to try. He had to make her understand this was all a terrible mistake. The affair, bringing Amber to the meeting, all of it. He could fix this. He had to fix this. The drive home took 20 minutes. Trevor's hands shook on the steering wheel. His phone kept ringing. His boss. Patterson. The other partners. He ignored them all. The Colonial looked normal from outside. Same perfect lawn, same neat flower beds. But Trevor knew everything had changed. He parked in the driveway and sat for a moment, trying to gather his thoughts. What would he say? How could he explain? Finally he got out and went to the front door. His key still worked, which surprised him somehow. Inside, the house was quiet. Too quiet. "Sienna?" he called out. No answer. He went upstairs to their bedroom. Empty. Her closet was open, and Trevor realized with a jolt that a lot of her clothes were missing. Her dresser drawers were half empty. Personal items were gone from the bathroom. How long had she been moving out? Trevor sank onto the bed, his head in his hands. His phone rang again. This time it was his boss, Richard Henderson himself. Trevor had to answer. "Trevor, what the hell happened today?" Richard's voice was ice cold. "It's complicated," Trevor started. "Complicated? You took your mistress to the most important client meeting of the year, and it turns out the CEO is your wife? That's not complicated, Trevor. That's catastrophic. I didn't know Sienna worked there. I had no idea. That's your defense? That you're so clueless about your own wife's life that you didn't know she became a CEO? That doesn't make you look better, Trevor. It makes you look worse. Richard, please. Let me explain. The board is meeting in an hour. They want you there. Be prepared to explain why we shouldn't fire you immediately." The line went dead. Trevor sat in the empty bedroom, feeling his entire world collapse. His career was over. His marriage was over. Everything he'd worked for, gone in one afternoon. And it was his own fault. The board meeting was brutal. Richard and the other senior partners grilled Trevor for 2 hours. They wanted to know how long the affair had been going on. Why he'd brought Amber to the meeting. Whether he'd disclosed any confidential information to his mistress. Whether there were other ethical violations they should know about. Trevor answered honestly, because what was the point of lying now? 6 months. Because he wanted to impress her. No, probably. "You've embarrassed this firm," Richard said finally. "You've destroyed our relationship with Meridian Industries, probably permanently. And you've shown a complete lack of judgment and professionalism." "I know," Trevor said quietly. "I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix this. We're putting you on immediate suspension. 2 weeks unpaid. During that time, the board will decide whether to terminate your partnership." "Richard, please? You're lucky we're not firing you on the spot. 2 weeks. Go home. Don't come back until we contact you." Trevor left the office in a daze. It was only 6 o'clock, but it felt like midnight. He drove aimlessly for a while, not ready to go back to the empty house. Eventually, he ended up at a bar downtown, the kind of place he used to go with colleagues after winning big cases. He ordered a whiskey and stared at it. His phone buzzed. A text from Amber, "We need to talk." He ignored it. Another text from his mother, "Your father and I heard something disturbing. Call us." He ignored that too. Another from Patterson, "Sorry man. That was rough." Trevor downed the whiskey and ordered another. How had this happened? 6 months ago he'd had everything. A successful career, a beautiful wife, respect in his industry. And now he was suspended from work, facing divorce, publicly humiliated. All because he'd been stupid enough to cheat. No, not just stupid. Cruel. Arrogant. He'd treated Sienna like she didn't matter, like she was just a fixture in his life he could take for granted. He'd paraded Amber around, rubbed the affair in her face. He'd been so convinced of his own importance that he never considered she might be capable of fighting back. But she had. She'd done more than fight back. She'd won. Trevor spent the next week in a fog. He stayed at the house alone, since Sienna never came home. He called her repeatedly, but she'd blocked his number. He tried emailing, but those bounced back too. She'd cut him off completely. Amber broke up with him on day 3. She came by the house to pick up her things and told him she couldn't be with someone who'd destroyed his own life so spectacularly. She'd already found a new job at a different firm. She'd be fine. Unlike him. On day 5 the divorce papers arrived. Sienna's lawyer had drawn them up with brutal efficiency. She wanted nothing from him except her freedom. He could have the house, the cars, everything. She just wanted out. Trevor signed them with shaking hands. On day 7 Richard called. The board had made their decision. Trevor's partnership was terminated. Effective immediately. He had until the end of the week to clear out his office. "For what it's worth," Richard said, "you were a good lawyer. But you let your personal life destroy your professional reputation. That's unforgivable in this business." Trevor packed up his office on day 8. 10 years of his life reduced to 3 cardboard boxes. His colleagues avoided eye contact as he left. The receptionist, who used to flirt with him, looked through him like he was invisible. By day 10 Trevor realized he'd lost everything that mattered. His job. His wife. His reputation. His future. And he had no one to blame but himself. While Trevor's life was imploding, Sienna's was flourishing. The week after the Henderson meeting, she threw herself into her work with renewed energy. The confrontation had been painful but necessary, and now she felt truly free to focus on building Meridian Industries into something exceptional. Her first major decision as CEO was to restructure the company's partnership approach. Instead of relying on a single firm for the Riverside development, she brought in 3 different companies to handle different aspects. Construction, financing, design. It was more complex but also more secure. No single partner could hold them hostage. "This is brilliant," Rebecca said when Sienna presented the plan. "Why didn't anyone think of this before?" "Because they were too focused on finding one perfect partner instead of building the perfect team," Sienna replied. The strategy worked. Within 2 weeks they had commitments from all 3 firms. The Riverside development moved forward, bigger and better than the original Henderson proposal. And Meridian Industries maintained control throughout. Sienna also began making changes to company culture. She implemented flexible work schedules, increased parental leave, and created mentorship programs for young employees. She wanted Meridian to be the kind of place where people felt valued, not just used. Julian stopped by her office one afternoon in late August. "I'm hearing good things," he said, settling into one of her visitor chairs. "You've made quite an impression in just a few weeks." "I'm trying," Sienna said. "It helps that I have a great team." "Speaking of teams, how are you doing personally?" "That meeting with Trevor must have been difficult." "It was necessary," Sienna corrected. "And honestly, I feel lighter now. Like I've been carrying this weight for months and I finally put it down." "Good. You deserve to be happy." They talked for a while about business strategy and industry trends. But as Julian was leaving, he paused at the door. "Sienna, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you've grown tremendously over the past few months. You're not the same woman I met in that coffee shop." "I know," Sienna said softly. "I like who I'm becoming." "So do I." After he left, Sienna sat at her desk, thinking about his words. She was different. Stronger. More confident. More herself than she'd been in years. That evening, instead of going home to her apartment, she decided to visit her sister Nicole. They hadn't seen each other much since Sienna had started her new job, and she missed her. Nicole lived in a small house in the suburbs with her husband and 3 kids. When Sienna arrived, chaos reigned. The kids were running around, dinner was burning, and Nicole looked frazzled. "Sienna, thank God," Nicole said, hugging her tight. "Can you watch the kids for 10 minutes while I save dinner?" "Of course." Sienna spent the next hour playing with her nieces and nephew, helping with homework and reading bedtime stories. By the time the kids were asleep and she and Nicole could sit down with wine, she felt exhausted but content. "So," Nicole said, studying her sister, "you look different." "Different how?" "Happy. You look happy. Really happy, not just pretending." Sienna smiled. "I'm happy. I left Trevor, got a new job, started a new life. It's been incredible. I heard what happened at that meeting. Trevor called me crying. Literally crying." "What did he say?" "That he made a terrible mistake. That he lost everything. That he wants you back." Sienna took a sip of wine. "And what did you tell him?" "That he should have thought of that before he cheated on my sister for 6 months. Nicole reached over and squeezed Sienna's hand. "I'm proud of you. You could have fallen apart, but instead you built something amazing." "I had help. Julian has been incredible." "Julian," Nicole repeated, her eyes sparkling. "Tell me about Julian." "He's my mentor. He helped me get the CEO position." And nothing. We're friends." "But you want it to be more." Sienna hesitated. "Maybe. Eventually. But right now I'm focused on me. On my career. On building the life I want." "That's smart," Nicole agreed. "But don't close yourself off to the possibility of love again. Not all men are like Trevor." Later that night, driving back to her apartment, Sienna thought about Nicole's words. She hadn't let herself think much about romance since discovering Trevor's affair. The betrayal had hurt too much. But maybe someday she could try again. September brought new challenges and opportunities. Meridian secured 2 more major development projects, both bringing in substantial revenue. Sienna's leadership was paying off, and the board was thrilled. But she also learned that Henderson and Associates was struggling. Industry gossip said they'd lost 3 major clients in the past month. Partners were leaving. Their stock value had dropped 20%. Part of Sienna felt guilty. She'd contributed to their downfall by rejecting their proposal so publicly. But the rational part of her knew Henderson had been on shaky ground long before she'd arrived. Trevor's misconduct had just accelerated the inevitable. In early October, Julian invited her to dinner. Not a business dinner, he clarified. A real date if she was interested. Sienna considered for a long moment before answering. "Yes," she said. "I'd like that." They went to a small Italian restaurant, cozy and intimate. Julian was charming and funny, asking about her life beyond work, sharing stories from his own past. He told her about his divorce 15 years ago, about the lessons he'd learned, about why he'd never remarried. "I was waiting for someone worth the risk," he said, looking at her meaningfully. Sienna felt something flutter in her chest. It wasn't the intense, overwhelming passion she'd felt for Trevor in the beginning. It was quieter, steadier. Like coming home. "I'm not ready for anything serious yet," she said honestly. "I'm still healing." "I know. I can wait." They took things slowly after that. Dinner once a week. Coffee dates. Long phone conversations about everything and nothing. Julian never pushed, never pressured. He just existed in her life as a steady, supportive presence. By November, Sienna realized she was genuinely happy. Not happy despite what Trevor had done, but happy because of what she'd done for herself. She'd taken the worst moment of her life and turned it into an opportunity for growth. One afternoon, Thomas knocked on her office door. "Ms. Lawrence, you have a visitor. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's urgent." "Who is it?" "Trevor Henderson." Sienna's stomach tightened. She hadn't seen or spoken to Trevor since the boardroom meeting. The divorce had been finalized through their lawyers. She'd moved on completely. "Should I have security remove him?" Thomas asked. Sienna considered. She could refuse to see him, have him escorted out. It would be justified. But part of her was curious. What could he possibly want? "No," she said finally. "I'll see him. But stay nearby in case I need you." "Of course." Trevor entered her office looking nothing like the confident man who'd walked into the boardroom 3 months ago. He'd lost weight. His suit hung loosely on his frame. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He looked broken. "Sienna," he said quietly. "Thank you for seeing me." "You have 5 minutes," she replied coldly. "What do you want?" "I wanted to apologize. Properly. For everything. The affair. The lying. Taking Amber to that meeting. All of it. Okay. Apology noted. Anything else? I also wanted you to know that I'm leaving town. Taking a job in Seattle. Starting over. Good for you. I know you hate me, Trevor continued, his voice cracking slightly. And you have every right to. But I need you to know that I loved you. I still love you. I just lost sight of what was important. Sienna studied him for a long moment. A few months ago, seeing him like this would have made her feel something. Pity maybe. Or satisfaction. But now, looking at this hollow version of her ex-husband, she felt nothing. I don't hate you, Trevor, she said finally. I just don't care about you anymore. You're not part of my life. You're not relevant to my future. You're just someone I used to know. Right? He whispered. I understand. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're doing well. You deserve to be happy. I am happy, Sienna said. Finally. After he left, Sienna sat at her desk for a while, processing the encounter. She'd expected to feel triumphant, vindicated. But instead she just felt peaceful. That chapter of her life was truly closed now. She picked up her phone and called Julian. Hey, she said when he answered. Are you free tonight? I'd like to have dinner. Always, he replied. Your place or mine? I'll cook. I can't wait. Sienna smiled and looked out her office window at the city below. Her city now. Her life. Her future. And it was beautiful. December arrived cold and clear. Sienna stood in her apartment, which she'd gradually transformed into a real home over the past few months. Warm blue furniture, family photos on the walls, plants on every surface. It felt like hers in a way the Colonial never had. She was making coffee when her phone rang. Rebecca. Morning, boss. Have you seen the news? No, why? Henderson and Associates officially filed for bankruptcy this morning. It's all over the financial networks. Sienna set down her coffee mug carefully. Bankruptcy? Complete collapse. They couldn't recover from losing the Meridian deal and all those clients. The partners are scrambling to find new positions, but the firm itself is done. After they hung up, Sienna pulled up the news on her laptop. Rebecca was right. Henderson and Associates, a firm that had been in business for 30 years, was shutting its doors. The article listed several factors: poor financial management, loss of major clients, ethical concerns. Trevor's name appeared multiple times, always negatively. She should have felt satisfied. Trevor and his firm had paid the price for their actions. But instead, Sienna felt oddly detached. This was business. Companies failed when they made bad decisions. It wasn't personal. Well, maybe it was a little personal. That afternoon, Julian stopped by her office with lunch. I figured you'd be too busy to eat, he said, unpacking sandwiches and salads. Thought I'd make sure you took a break. You're too good to me, Sienna said, smiling. I know. He settled into his usual chair. So, Henderson and Associates. You heard. Everyone's heard. It's the biggest bankruptcy in the industry this year. He paused. How do you feel about it? Sienna considered the question. Relieved, I think. Like it's finally completely over. Trevor can't hurt me anymore because he has nothing left to hurt me with. And you're okay with that? Knowing you played a part in his downfall? I played a part in my own success, Sienna corrected. Trevor played a part in his own downfall. I just refused to be dragged down with him. Julian nodded approvingly. That's a healthy way to look at it. They ate lunch together, talking about Meridian's upcoming projects and industry trends. But as Julian was getting ready to leave, he hesitated. Sienna, I need to tell you something. Okay. I'm falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them. Sienna's heart stuttered, then steadied. I know we agreed to take things slow, Julian continued. And I'm not asking you to say it back or change anything. I just needed you to know how I feel. Sienna stood and walked over to him. She took his hands in hers, looking up at his kind, familiar face. I'm falling in love with you too, she said softly. But you're right. I'm not ready to rush this. I need time to be sure to trust again. I can wait, Julian said again, just like he had before. I'll wait as long as you need. They kissed, gentle and sweet, full of promise but not pressure. As January rolled into February, Sienna watched Trevor's situation continue to deteriorate from a distance. He'd left for Seattle as planned, but word filtered back through mutual acquaintances. He was working as a junior associate at a small firm, a massive step down from his previous position. He was living in a tiny apartment, driving an old car. The money and status that had defined him were gone. Amber, meanwhile, had married another lawyer she'd met at her new firm. She'd moved on quickly, as Sienna had suspected she would. Amber had never loved Trevor. She'd loved what he represented: success, power, money. When those disappeared, so did her interest. Sienna could have felt smug about it, but mostly she felt nothing. Trevor and Amber were footnotes in her story now, not main characters. In March, Meridian Industries received an offer. A struggling real estate development firm was looking for a buyer, and they'd approached Sienna about a potential acquisition. She reviewed the details with Rebecca and her team. "The company has good bones," Rebecca said. "Solid client relationships, talented employees. But their leadership has been terrible. They made a series of bad decisions that put them in financial trouble." "What's the company?" Sienna asked. Rebecca hesitated. "Henderson and Associates." Sienna sat back in her chair, absorbing this information. Trevor's old firm, the company he'd given 10 years of his life to, was now on the market. And she had the power to buy it. "Walk me through the numbers," she said. Over the next 2 weeks, Sienna and her team analyzed every aspect of Henderson and Associates. The firm was worth far less than it had been a year ago, which made it a potentially good investment. But it would also require significant restructuring. "If we buy it," Sienna said during a strategy meeting, "we get the senior leadership but keep the good employees. We bring in new management, merge their client list with ours, and rebuild the brand. It could be very profitable." "It would also be poetic," Rebecca pointed out. "Taking over your ex-husband's company." "That's not why I'm considering it," Sienna said firmly. "I'm considering it because it's a sound business decision. The poetry is just a bonus." The board approved the acquisition in early April. Meridian Industries purchased Henderson and Associates for a fraction of its former value. Sienna immediately promoted several of the talented junior associates who'd been held back by poor leadership. She brought in new senior partners who shared her vision. She created mentorship programs and professional development opportunities. Within 2 months, the former Henderson and Associates, now operating as a subsidiary of Meridian, was thriving again. But Sienna made one policy very clear: Trevor Henderson would never be welcome back. Not as an employee, not as a contractor, not even as a client. He was blacklisted from the industry he'd once dominated. It was harsh, but it was final. One evening in May, Sienna and Julian were having dinner at his place. He'd cooked something light and healthy, and they were eating on his balcony as the sun set. "I have something to tell you," Julian said. "Should I be worried?" "No. Actually, I think you'll like it. I've been offered a position. CEO of a consulting firm in California. It's a big opportunity." Sienna's heart sank. "Are you taking it?" "I don't know. That depends on you." "On me?" "I want to be where you are, Sienna. If you want me to stay, I'll turn it down. If you want to come with me, we can build a life together in California. And if you need me to go so you can focus on your career, I'll understand. But I need to know what you want." Sienna looked out at the city lights beginning to glow as darkness fell. 6 months ago, she would have automatically sacrificed her own needs for someone else's career. But she wasn't that person anymore. "Stay," she said. "I want you to stay. But not for me. Stay because you want to be here, because you love your work, because this is where you belong. Don't make your decisions based on me." Julian smiled. "You're right. And you know what? I do love my work here. I'll turn down the California position." "Are you sure?" "Completely. Besides," he reached across the table and took her hand, "I'm exactly where I want to be." That night, Sienna drove home feeling content in a way she'd never experienced before. She had a career she loved, people who respected her, a man who valued her without trying to control her. She'd built a life entirely on her own terms. And it was everything she'd ever wanted. Summer arrived with warmth and bright blue skies. Sienna stood in the Meridian Industries boardroom, presenting her annual report to the board of directors. The numbers were impressive. Revenue had increased by 40%. They'd successfully completed 3 major development projects. Employee satisfaction was at an all-time high. The company was thriving under her leadership. "Exceptional work, Ms. Lawrence," the board chairman said when she finished. "You've exceeded every expectation we had when we hired you." "Thank you. But it's been a team effort. I couldn't have done any of this without the talented people working here." After the meeting, Sienna returned to her office to find a massive bouquet of flowers waiting on her desk. The card read, "Proud of you. Always, Julian." She smiled and sent him a quick text. "Thank you for the flowers. Dinner tonight?" His response came immediately, "Anywhere you want." Thomas knocked on her door frame. Ms. Lawrence, you have a visitor. Your sister. Nicole burst in, grinning widely. I couldn't wait. Did the board approve it? Approve what? Don't play dumb with me. The expansion project. How did you know about that? Rebecca may have mentioned something when I ran into her at the grocery store. So, did they approve it? Sienna laughed. Yes, they approved it. Meridian is expanding into commercial real estate. We're going to build mixed-use developments, combining residential and retail space. It's a huge undertaking. That's incredible, Nicole said, hugging her sister. I'm so proud of you. They went to lunch at a cafe near Sienna's office, sitting outside in the sunshine. Nicole updated Sienna on the kids, her husband's new job, the renovations they were planning for their house. Normal, everyday life. It felt grounding. Can I ask you something? Nicole said over coffee. Do you ever think about Trevor? Sienna considered. Sometimes. But not in the way you might expect. I don't miss him or wish things had worked out differently. I'm grateful actually. If he hadn't cheated, I might have stayed in that marriage forever, slowly disappearing. He did me a favor by showing me I deserved better. That's a healthy way to look at it. It took me a while to get here, Sienna admitted. At first I was just angry. Then I wanted revenge. But now I'm just focused on my own happiness. Trevor is irrelevant to that. Have you heard from him at all? Not since he came to my office last year. I think he finally accepted that it's over. Nicole nodded. Good. You deserve someone who treats you right. Speaking of which, how are things with Julian? Sienna smiled, the kind of smile that came from deep contentment. Really good. We're taking our time building something real. He's nothing like Trevor. He respects me, supports my career, never tries to make himself more important than our relationship. So you're happy. I'm very happy. In July, Meridian Industries broke ground on their first mixed-use development project. It was a massive undertaking, transforming an entire city block into a vibrant community space with apartments, shops, restaurants, and green spaces. Sienna stood at the groundbreaking ceremony, wearing a bright yellow dress and a hard hat, surrounded by her team and local officials. The press was there, documenting this new chapter for the company. Sienna gave a speech about vision, community, and the importance of building spaces where people could thrive. Afterward, Julian appeared at her side, having watched from the audience. You were amazing, he said. Thank you for being here. I wouldn't have missed it. He paused. Sienna, I have something I want to ask you. Okay. Move in with me. Not because it's the next logical step, but because I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep next to you every night. Because coming home to you would make every day better. Sienna felt her heart expand with joy. Yes, I'd love that. They kissed, right there at the construction site, with dirt and machinery and the promise of new beginnings all around them. The move happened over the next month. Sienna packed up her apartment, the place that had been her refuge during the hardest time of her life. She was sad to leave it but also ready. That chapter was over. A new one was beginning. Julian's house was beautiful, spacious but cozy, filled with books and art and comfortable furniture. They spent weekends rearranging things, finding places for her belongings alongside his, creating a shared space that felt like home to both of them. One Saturday morning, as they were having coffee in bed, Julian's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. It's Richard Henderson, Trevor's old boss. Answer it, Sienna said. Julian put it on speaker. Richard, good morning. Julian, I hope I'm not calling too early. I wanted to reach out about something. What's that? Trevor Henderson has been calling me asking for a reference. He's trying to get hired at a firm in Seattle, and they want to speak to his previous employers. I wanted to know how you'd suggest I handle it. Julian looked at Sienna, raising an eyebrow in question. This was her call. Sienna thought for a moment. She could tell Richard to give Trevor a bad reference, ensure he never worked in the industry again. It would be justified. But it would also mean she was still letting Trevor affect her decisions. Tell them the truth, she said finally. Trevor was a talented lawyer who made serious personal and professional mistakes. He's capable of good work, but he has issues with judgment and ethics. Let the Seattle firm decide if they want to take the risk. Richard chuckled on the other end. That's very diplomatic, Ms. Lawrence. I'll do exactly that. After they hung up, Julian pulled Sienna close. You surprise me sometimes. I thought you'd want to bury him completely. I did for a while. But I've moved past that. Trevor destroyed his own career. I don't need to keep punishing him. You're a better person than most. I'm just a person who's choosing to focus on building my future instead of dwelling on my past. In September, Sienna received an invitation to speak at a Women in Business conference. They wanted her to share her story, to inspire other women who might be facing challenges in their careers or personal lives. At first she was reluctant. Her story was personal, painful in parts. But after talking it over with Nicole and Julian, she decided to accept. The conference was held in a massive hotel ballroom, filled with hundreds of women from all industries and backgrounds. Sienna stood backstage, nervous in a way she hadn't been since that first day as CEO. "You've got this," Julian whispered, kissing her cheek. He was sitting in the front row, there to support her. Sienna walked onto the stage wearing a stunning royal blue suit. The applause was immediate and enthusiastic. She told her story. Not in dramatic, flowery language but in simple, honest terms. She talked about discovering Trevor's affair. About feeling lost and worthless. About deciding to rebuild her life. About Julian's mentorship and the CEO position. About the boardroom confrontation and the divorce. About choosing to focus on her own success instead of revenge. "I'm not telling you this story to brag," she said to the silent, attentive audience. "I'm telling you this because I want you to know that your value is not determined by anyone else. Not your spouse, not your boss, not society. You determine your own worth. And when you truly believe in yourself, when you truly commit to building the life you deserve, amazing things can happen." The applause was deafening. Afterward, dozens of women approached her, sharing their own stories of betrayal, disappointment, and eventual triumph. Sienna listened to each one, offering encouragement and advice where she could. She realized that her story wasn't unique. Countless women had faced similar challenges. The difference was she'd had the resources and support to fight back. Not everyone was that fortunate. "I want to do more," she told Julian on the drive home. "I want to create opportunities for women who don't have the advantages I had." "Like what?" "A foundation maybe. Or a mentorship program. Something that helps women who are trying to rebuild their careers after setbacks. I had you to guide me. Not everyone has that." "That's a beautiful idea," Julian said. "And I'll help in any way I can." Over the next few months, Sienna worked with lawyers and financial advisors to establish the Lawrence Foundation for Women in Business. The foundation would provide grants, mentorship, and educational opportunities for women looking to advance their careers or start their own businesses. Sienna personally funded it with a significant portion of her CEO's salary. The launch event in December was small but meaningful. A dozen women received the first round of grants, each one with a story of overcoming obstacles. Sienna shook each woman's hand, looked her in the eye and said, "I believe in you." Because she did. She believed in the power of women supporting women. She believed in second chances and new beginnings. She believed that pain could be transformed into purpose. On New Year's Eve, Sienna and Julian hosted a party at their house. Nicole and her family came, along with Rebecca and Thomas and other colleagues from Meridian. The house was filled with laughter and music and the warmth of people who genuinely cared about each other. At midnight, as fireworks exploded outside and everyone cheered, Julian pulled Sienna close. "Happy New Year," he said. "Happy New Year," she replied. "Any regrets?" Sienna thought about the past 2 years. The pain of Trevor's betrayal. The fear of starting over. The hard work of building a new life. The joy of discovering her own strength. "None," she said firmly. "Not a single one." "Good. Because I have something for you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Sienna's heart stopped. "Before you panic," Julian said laughing, "this isn't what you think." "Well, it is, but also it isn't." He opened the box. Inside was a beautiful sapphire ring, not an engagement ring but something more symbolic. "This is a promise," Julian said. "A promise that I will always support your dreams, respect your choices and love you for exactly who you are. Not who I want you to be, not who society says you should be, but you. Exactly as you are right now and exactly as you'll become. Someday maybe we'll talk about marriage. But right now, I just want you to know you're loved completely." Sienna felt tears streaming down her face, happy tears this time. "I love you too. So much." He slipped the ring on her right hand, and they kissed as their friends cheered and the fireworks continued to light up the sky. Later, after everyone had gone home and they were cleaning up together, Sienna paused at the window. She looked out at the city, her city, glowing in the night. 2 years ago, she'd been a woman who didn't recognize her own worth. She'd been willing to accept scraps of affection, to make herself small, to live in Trevor's shadow. Now she was CEO of a major company. She'd built a foundation to help other women. She was in a healthy, loving relationship with a man who valued her. She had purpose, passion, and peace. Trevor had tried to break her with his betrayal. Instead,